How do I understand my wife better? It's not going to happen. I got nothing for you. See you. Oh, just kidding. Oh, just kidding. Just kidding. We can help you with that. You've got to understand your wife better. I understand that, but you have to understand yourself better first. In this video, we're going to figure out how to understand ourselves, then understand our wives to be able to better communicate on a daily basis and reduce conflict in that relationship. We know we can do it. Stay tuned. To understand our wife better, to understand your wife better, you've got to understand yourself first. Self-awareness is key. If you haven't checked out our videos on the DISC of the DISC model of human behavior, you'll find them in the description down below. Go check those out before you come and watch the rest of this video, because that's going to be the methodology we're using. And if you don't have that, you're going to have nothing. If you watch those videos, you know that there are 4 types of temperament, and everyone's personality and identity are blended in with this temperament and culture and where you were raised and how you were raised and who your parents were and religious beliefs and all those kinds of good things. So we've got to first understand ourselves before we can understand our spouses. So let's talk about this mentality of being outgoing versus reserved. I can divide the world into those 2 kinds of groups of people, and neither one of them is bad. They're all good. It depends on who you are. So outgoing folks, fast-paced, going all the time, enthusiastic, responsive to everything and everyone, going a mile a minute. I mean, they're chugging 5-hour energies like it's Squanah style. Woohoo! They're just really inspiring and going crazy. Let's catch our breath for those reserved types, shall we? A little more low-key, slower to get started in projects and things like that. They're about getting things right the first time, and they're taking their time when they're getting things done. So when we're talking about understanding our wives, you have to understand, is she an outgoing person or is she reserved? Because that's going to dictate what she likes to do and the things that she doesn't like to do and sort of how she gets her energy. But then you have to ask yourself, well, is your wife a people-oriented person or is she a task-oriented person? If she's people-oriented, she's in touch with her feelings and emotions and relationships and other people's feelings and emotions. But if she's task-oriented, she's about process and purpose and form and function and really getting things done from an organized perspective. So in looking at that, we can talk about, oh man, well, I sort of kind of know my wife may be a little bit of a blend of those 2 things, or she may be really one or the other. And so that's important to know, because if we're going on vacation or we're going to a restaurant or whatever, that's going to dictate how we understand each other. So let me give you an example. How many times have you been in a restaurant and you've seen a couple sitting across from one another like this? They're communicating, but not with each other. So if you want to understand your wife better, your spouse, whomever that happens to be, you've got to open up a dialogue. And it doesn't use your fingers. It uses this, okay? Or if you're deaf, it uses these, because this is sign language, okay? And so you're talking about friends and all that kind of, this is friends and this is nice and all those things with ASL. It's a beautiful language. Sign language is a beautiful language. But we're communicating one-to-one, not with our thumbs, but in person. And so that matters from an outgoing versus reserved perspective. An outgoing person needs to do that with lots of different people. A reserved person doesn't have a lot of those relationships. They have 1 or 2 really close friends. So that might be a dynamic in your relationship that you're struggling with. Why is my wife always going out with her friends all the time? Well, it's because she might be an outgoing person and she needs those different relationships for that stimulus to recharge her batteries. Or if you're an outgoing husband and you're saying, why does my wife not want to go out and do things with my friends or whatever? She just wants to stay home all the time. Or she only has 1 friend. My gosh, that must be a lonely life. No, not necessarily. She just puts a lot of stock in 1 or 2 really, really close personal relationships. And so that difference can have an impact. But 90% of all conflict comes from this people versus task division. And that's pretty scary, because people-oriented folks, you wouldn't think they would have a lot of conflict there. Let's say you're going on vacation. Let's say you're going on a cruise. If you're going on a cruise with your family and you see this person over here who's over at the karaoke bar, 5 minutes later they're over at the slot machine, then 10 minutes later they're over at the pool, and then 5 minutes later they're back there, some kind of trivia contest. They're all over the boat. That you can pretty much tell that's an outgoing person. And they're not going to want to stay in the room, or they're not going to want to go back to the adult-only quiet section and just read a book in a hammock all day. That's never going to work for them. That's not going to fuel their batteries in terms of how they recharge on a vacation. And consequently, that's going to generate some conflict. Let's say that you're not planning a cruise. Hey, sweetheart, where do you want to go on vacation this summer? Well, let's go to Edisto Beach in South Carolina. If you don't know what Edisto Beach is all about, Edisto Beach is a place that has basically no attractions. It's just beach houses. There's one little grocery store, and there's one tiny little golf course on the backside of the property. Everything else is just beach houses. So there is no putt-putt. There are no cars to drive and little games to play, and there's none of that stuff. For an outgoing person, that's gonna stink. I mean, there's nothing to do. I mean, I'm just gonna sit there and watching TV, I'm just gonna get stir crazy. So again, how do we play this? How do we understand this conflict with one another? Well, it starts with understanding ourselves. Are you the kind of person that's going to want to be out there doing all those things with other people? Or are you going to be one of those people that wants the hammock and the mint julep or whatever is your drink of choice and that book so you can just enjoy some quiet time? Are you going to want to be around lots of other people, or are you going to want to do as many things on that vacation in a specific order as possible? Once you understand that self-awareness, then you can get outside yourself to understand your wife. This is how she's wired. This is how she thinks and feels. This is her lens. So I understand myself, then I understand others, then I can meet her where she is and adapt my behavior to hers so that we can understand each other better. So now that I understand this dynamic of back and forth of understanding myself and others, if I want to do my part, I've got to really understand myself. And it's not just, oh, I heard Alex talking about DISC and I think I'm sort of a D. If you really want to understand yourself and create a conversation, you take an assessment. Well, where do we do that? In the description below, I've got a link to the store. We've got all kinds of assessments there, basic assessments all the way out to 50-page assessments that are $99, and they're just crazy, wild information. But to get a conversation started, and that's what we want to do here to understand your wife better, have an assessment. You take that assessment, it gives you a 6-page document. It tells you your strengths, the characteristics that describe you personally. It'll tell you the intensity of your traits. How much D are you? How much C? How much I? How much S? And then what that does is that allows you to have a tangible document that you can come to dinner and say, hey, sweetheart, I took this assessment. Look what I found. Whoop! You put that in front of her and she'll go, oh my gosh, it says that you're driven and you're determined and you're a doer. And all those things describe you to a T. That's fascinating. And so she'll start checking the mental boxes of the value of that assessment. She'll say, oh my gosh, that assessment really tells me everything I need to know about you to understand you better. Surely that could do the same thing for me, right? Aha! Now we got her. Because if she takes an assessment, now you're going to understand her better. And so again, that creates a conversation. Once we both have assessments, we can have a dialogue. We're all on the same page, speaking the same language, and we're going to transform and transport our relationship up here, transforming the way we communicate, and have a serious, tremendous, life-changing reduction in conflict in that relationship. I'll see you on the next video.